Backrooms is the new horror movie released in May of 2026, directed by Kane Parsons. However, the Backrooms actually began as an internet creepypasta in 2019 after an anonymous user posted a photo of an unsettling yellow office space online alongside a short story about accidentally no-clipping out of reality and becoming trapped in an endless maze of empty rooms. That idea quickly exploded across the internet, but it was Kane Parsons, better known online as Kane Pixels, who really brought it to life when he released his Backrooms found footage series on YouTube in 2022. And at that time, he was only 16 years old, and his take on the concept became such a phenomenon that it eventually led to A24 giving him the opportunity to direct this feature-length adaptation. And after getting out of the movie Backrooms, this movie to me truly felt like the visual representation of what it's like to walk around aimlessly, just trapped in your own head with absolutely no end in sight. And I don't think ZakIsCinema has ever related to something more than he did after experiencing the Backrooms. So if you can relate to that but have nobody to talk to about this movie, well, buddy, you have found the right place here, and please consider joining, because today we're going to be doing a spoiler review and discussion for the brand new movie Backrooms. So without further ado, let's jump into the review section, starting with the positives or just the things that I enjoyed most about this movie. So just for full transparency's sake, I am familiar enough with the Backrooms creepypasta and the Backrooms lore, and I've seen clips from Kane Parsons' YouTube series, but for me, I have a pretty surface level understanding of the lore and the story. So to me, this movie was really my first true experience with the concept and experiencing this completed story here. And the best way I could describe the vibe and atmosphere of this movie is it felt like being trapped inside Jack Torrance's head from The Shining all throughout the third act of that movie. To me, this movie had one of the most unique atmospheres I've ever experienced, specifically in a theater. Watching it on the big screen genuinely made me feel like I was getting lost in my own thoughts sitting there in the theater. There's this constant feeling that Parsons does that creates this feeling of paranoia, isolation, confusion, and unease that just extended throughout the whole runtime. And currently, I've been seeing some people criticize the movie for maybe not providing enough answers or the story's sake, but honestly, I think they're kind of missing the whole point and idea of the Backrooms. The concept, from what I've understood, is it's never really been about explanations, but more so about being trapped in a situation that doesn't make a lot of sense and experiencing the anxiety, confusion, and dread that naturally comes along with something like that. And I think that Kane Parsons here and the team behind him really captured that unsettling idea beautifully. The set design here in this movie is absolutely incredible. Knowing just how many practical sets were built for this movie makes it even more impressive because you can genuinely feel the love and passion behind every single shot. Seeing the Backrooms realized on this theatrical scale is something I don't think I'm going to forget anytime soon. And what I loved most about the actual setting and the sets of the Backrooms is just how familiar the environment feels while simultaneously feeling completely wrong and unnerving. The Backrooms becomes this visual representation of just feeling lost, directionless, and trapped inside your own head. And every time these characters went deeper into this place, my anxiety just kept building and building. And honestly, looking back on the experience, I feel like some of my all time favorite parts in the movie are simply just the characters walking around this environment. I honestly could have watched 2, 3 hours straight of just characters endlessly exploring this environment without any dialogue. And I don't think I ever would have gotten bored. I mean, my favorite parts are literally just the characters walking around this environment. I feel like I could watch that for hours. And the horror and scare scenes, I think, work really well for me because it isn't trying to function like this traditional scare heavy horror movie. Instead, it kind of wants you to experience the paranoia and discomfort these characters are feeling. And there are so many memorable sequences like that. I mean, just the characters walking around the back rooms, that first shot when Clark is walking in the back rooms, absolutely unsettling, absolutely amazing. There's this incredibly tense and eerie laundry room scene that is a huge standout to me. The kitchen sequence with Clark and Mary, the Christmas tree room that's all dark playing this creepy version of a Christmas song, and the majority of the third act all are huge standouts to me. And all those scenes that I just listed create this constant feeling that something is horribly wrong, even when nothing overtly sometimes is happening. But then there are some overt parts that I think were handled really, really well here. And to me, the biggest standout from this movie is honestly the characters and the layers to the characters. It's something way deeper than I anticipated going into this movie. For example, the therapist character, Mary, I think is especially well written here. And to me, therapist characters often feel very unrealistic in movies sometimes. They often just exist to solely provide exposition to the situation or to the main character. But Mary here actually feels like a real person, which is such a nice change of pace. She feels like her own person, but then within these therapeutic scenes, she helps us to better understand the character of Clark. But then at the same time, she also has her own emotional baggage and personal struggles that come out very naturally during their conversations. And I especially love the therapy scenes in this movie because they avoid the typical tell the audience the themes approach, and instead we learn about both characters and the situations that they're in their personal lives through their conversations. They do a couple role playing exercises that are very common in therapeutic settings. So I thought that was handled super well, and those scenes feel way more authentic. And on top of that, what surprised me the most is just the themes and messages here that are very overt, but also kind of subtle, and you can kind of dig a little deeper with them. For example, this movie uses the idea of liminality incredibly well. The concept of just being stuck in this transitional state without any destination is a huge theme here. Mary, the therapist character, spends the movie helping people begin their journeys through therapy, self-discovery, and a book that she has, but she doesn't really know where she's trying to go herself, so it's a little ironic, a little hypocritical. And throughout the movie, you kind of pick up on that the backrooms become more of this like physical manifestation of that idea, a place where all context, purpose, and destination has really been just stripped away and left to be almost nothing. And the character of Clark eventually embraces the journey itself and starts treating the backrooms like his home. But the moment Mary reframes it as his destination in that beautiful kitchen scene, it's kind of giving him permission to stop moving forward, and the backrooms immediately turns against him. And then we see that descent and where that leaves off with that character. But on the contrasted side, meanwhile, Mary's journey becomes more about confronting her own past here. Her true destination has always been the childhood home, to her trauma and her mother's agoraphobia and OCD tendencies that are hinted at. And throughout the movie, we find that Mary, to finally move forward, she kind of has to accept that and never return to that version of her life. And to me, the movie really captures the feeling of feeling lost in life better than almost anything thing I've ever seen, especially recently. It explores those ideas visually and emotionally without just constantly spelling all of that information out to you and to the audience. So I thought that side of things was handled very well and provided interesting thoughts, ideas, and conversations long after you experience this movie. But with that said, let's jump over to my mixed aspects I have for the movie. And unfortunately, right now, my biggest mixed feeling is specifically with its ending. And right now, I'm definitely leaning a lot more negative towards it. But I also feel like this is a part in the movie that could play very different for me after I give it a little bit longer, after I rewatch it. But to me, right now, after a first time watch, my biggest feeling is that ending is way too abrupt and slightly clunky. And to me, I think this movie honestly could have used another 10 to 20 minutes. And I think it could have helped tremendously because the movie ends almost after immediately introducing a few final ideas, which just added to that clunky kind of feeling. Towards the end, we see Mary. She escapes the back rooms and interacts with Mark Duplass's character, learning he's part of this research team researching and investigating the back rooms. Then the movie ends by showing Mary's distorted duplicate still trapped inside the back rooms because she spent a lot of time there, and the back rooms have kind of made this distorted copy of her. It's definitely eerie and unsettling in my opinion, and I appreciate that it doesn't over explain or delve too deep into what the back rooms actually are. But at the same time, I feel like the movie ended on information we already had almost from the very beginning. For example, we already knew people were researching the back rooms. That's the very first scene that we get in this movie. We already knew that duplicates and duplicated environments already exist, so that's nothing new. And we already knew nobody fully understood what this place was. And because of that, I feel like I never got that final emotional or thematic statement from the film. I didn't need the movie to explain everything to me, especially with the back rooms. I feel like it's better to leave a lot unsaid here, but I at least did want one last reveal, realization, or character moment that kind of tied everything together before just cutting to the credits. Like it felt like some parts were missing there. So I'm going to see how I feel about it on rewatch. Just unfortunately, with how great of a time I was having, just to end so abruptly like that kind of soured my taste just a little bit, unfortunately. It felt so similar to Undertone, which came out a couple months ago, where I really enjoyed the experience, but the ending felt like something was missing and just ended way too abruptly, and like they forgot to finish crossing the finish line, which is frustrating because same with the back rooms. It's like you're right there. You were so close to perfectly landing the ship. It landed, but maybe not in the best way, in my opinion. But with that said, let's jump over to my negatives I have for this film. And I think my biggest issue that stands out to me is with the character of Clark and his descent into madness once he kind of gets trapped in the back rooms. And I understand lore-wise that time works differently in the back rooms, and that's a part of the story. But the movie doesn't do enough to establish that before its transformation. One moment, Clark here is exploring with his camera crew, gets lost, he is trapped in there, and then the very next scene, he's like tying up his therapist, going on full evil monologue mode. So I feel like I would have liked to experience that descent into madness alongside with him. I feel like maybe Mary could have been searching for him for a couple of weeks, but then we're following Clark in the back rooms and it's only like a couple of minutes, and you could angle, and I feel like that was such a missed opportunity to not really delve into that. I think something like that would have helped communicate how the back rooms distort time while making that mental breakdown feel a little bit more gradual and tragic, eerie, and creepy. Such a missed opportunity there, and it feels like so abrupt in the film. It reminds me of Revenge of the Sith when Anakin just turns on a dime. Like it felt like that, more easily forgiven here because the back rooms like infected his mind and everything. So easy to look past, but I feel like it was a missed opportunity that really could have elevated this movie. And this might seem like a nitpick, but my other issue is that none of the characters here really ever seem that interested in creating or tracking a way back to get back out of the back rooms. I understand initially getting lost exploring this incredible scenery, but after a certain point, it kind of became hard to believe nobody was leaving little like marks or like tying a rope to themselves or creating a trail or some sort of system. It felt like every character in the movie that entered the back rooms just immediately started wandering deeper and deeper and deeper without taking precautions. I understand maybe taking a turn or two, but then I feel like anybody with a brain would immediately turn back and be like, okay, this is way bigger than I thought it was going to be. I need some way to track where I'm going. Even in a setting that you've never been before, I think most people would come to an agreement that you kind of got to find your way back. So for a movie that otherwise feels grounded in how people react to bizarre situations, that stood out to me as very frustrating and unrealistic here. But with all that said, I will say that overall, Backrooms is a deeply immersive and unsettling horror experience that turns a simple internet creepypasta into a haunting exploration of isolation, liminality, and what it feels like to lose yourself both physically and emotionally. So for my rating for this movie, this is definitely a movie I would like to own on physical media, and I think I'd pay that full price for it. I do have some issues, some mixed feelings overall, especially towards the end here, but just this experience alone, I'd love to sit in my dark, empty apartment home alone one evening and just experience this film again, because the experience, the vibe, the atmosphere completely outweigh any of my little nitpicks I have for this film. So you guys have my thoughts on Backrooms. I mean, my God, what an incredible year for horror so far. Just this month alone, when the worst movie we've had is Passenger, and that's just like a very middle of the road cliche movie, not even unwatchable. We are definitely eating good here in 2026. But please down below, let me know, what did you think of Backrooms? Give me that point of context. Did you follow Kane Parsons and his YouTube internet series? Are you like me, kind of experiencing the Backrooms first through this film for the very first time? Let me know what you thought of this movie down below. But that's about it. I appreciate anybody watching my videos, so thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.